Dr. Jaxon Reed adjusted his collar as the military transport approached the classified facility. The morning sun cast long shadows across the desert landscape, but nothing could dispel the chill he felt about this assignment. 3 months had passed since humanity's victory in the Stellar War, and now he found himself heading to Detention Complex Omega-7, where alien prisoners of war were being held. The facility came into view like a metallic fortress rising from the sand. Its imposing walls and guard towers spoke of maximum security, while the biohazard warnings posted everywhere reminded him why most doctors had refused this position. Working with alien prisoners wasn't just dangerous, it was considered career suicide by his colleagues. "First time at Omega-7, Doc?" asked the transport pilot, glancing back at Jaxon through the cockpit window. "Yes," Jaxon replied, checking his medical supplies one final time. "Any advice?" The pilot's expression grew serious. "Don't let your guard down. These creatures might look harmless, but they're not human. They don't think like us, don't feel like us. Some of them have abilities we're still trying to understand." As they landed on the facility's reinforced pad, Jaxon wondered what he'd gotten himself into. He'd volunteered for this position partly out of scientific curiosity, but mostly because he believed healing should extend beyond species barriers. The war was over. Now came the harder task of building peace. First, Encounter Commander Torres met him at the entrance, a stern woman with graying hair and tired eyes. "Dr. Reed, welcome to Omega-7. I hope you're prepared for what you'll see. Here, these aren't your typical patients." They walked through corridors lined with reinforced doors and biometric scanners. The air hummed with the sound of force fields and environmental controls. "How many prisoners are we housing?" Jaxon asked. 47 survivors from various coalition species," Torres replied. "Most are cooperative, but we have several difficult cases. Speaking of which, your first assignment is in Cell Block C, Section 15. Subject designation V779, she." Handed him a tablet displaying basic information. The file was sparse. Female, Veilari species, captured during the siege of Kepler Station. What caught his attention were the behavioral notes. Exhibits extreme fear responses, non-cooperative, potential empathic abilities. Use of standard containment protocols required. "Empathic abilities?" Jaxon questioned. "The Veilari can supposedly sense emotions through physical contact," Torres explained with obvious skepticism. "That's why all staff wear protective gear when dealing with them. We can't risk psychological manipulation." They stopped before a reinforced door with a small observation window. Through the transparent barrier, Jaxon saw a figure huddled in the far corner of the sterile white cell. She was tall and slender, with pale skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Long, dark hair fell like a curtain around her face, but he could see her trembling even from this distance. "Her name is Nyxara," Torres continued. "Captured 3 weeks ago. She hasn't spoken a word since arriving, refuses to eat regularly, and becomes violent when approached. The guards have to use sonic restraints just to deliver meals." Jaxon studied the alien woman through the window. Everything about her posture screamed terror. The way she pressed herself against the wall, how her arms wrapped protectively around her knees, the rapid rise and fall of her chest. This wasn't a dangerous prisoner. This was a traumatized survivor. "Want to go in?" he said. Torres looked at him sharply. "Dr. Reed, I don't think you understand the risk. She broke Sergeant Walsh's arm last week when he tried to move her for cell maintenance." "She's terrified," Jaxon observed. "Look at her. She's malnourished, showing signs of severe psychological distress. That's exactly what I'm here to treat." After several minutes of argument, Torres reluctantly agreed, but only with full security protocols. Jaxon was required to wear protective gloves, carry a stun device, and keep his visit brief. As the cell door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, he stepped inside slowly, his hands visible and empty except for his medical scanner, breaking the code. The cell was smaller than it had appeared through the window, and the artificial lighting gave everything a harsh, clinical appearance. Nyxara flinched at the sound of the door, pressing herself deeper into the corner. When she lifted her head to look at him, Jaxon's breath caught. Her eyes were unlike anything he'd ever seen, large and luminous, shifting between silver and pale gold. They held an intelligence that was unmistakably sentient, unmistakably afraid. Her features were delicate but angular, with high cheekbones and a narrow chin. Despite her obvious distress, she was beautiful in a way that transcended species. "Hello," Jaxon said softly, stopping several feet away. "My name is Jaxon. I'm a doctor." She said something in her native language, a musical sound like wind through crystal chimes. The universal translator in his earpiece caught only fragments. "Stay away. Hurt. Please." "I'm not going to hurt you," he assured her, slowly kneeling, to bring himself to a less threatening height. "I want to help." Nyxara shook her head frantically, the luminescent quality of her skin flickering with her distress. Through the observation window, he could see Captain Brennan and 2 guards watching nervously, hands on their weapons. Jaxon noticed the way her hands shook, the hollow look in those extraordinary eyes, how her gray detention uniform hung loose on her frame. Against every protocol he'd been given, he began removing his protective gloves. The action seemed to freeze her, those glowing eyes fixed on his hands with an intensity that made him pause. "I just want to check if you're injured," he explained, extending his bare hand palm up toward her. "I won't force you. It's your choice." For long moments they remained like that. He kneeling with his hand outstretched, she pressed against the wall, watching him with those luminous eyes. He could hear his own heartbeat, the hum of the facility's systems, the distant murmur of voices from the corridor. Then, so slowly he almost didn't notice at first, she began to move. One pale, long-fingered hand emerged from where she'd been clutching her knees. It trembled as she reached toward him, stopping just inches from his palm. Her eyes met his, and Jaxon felt something like electricity in the air. Not physical, but something deeper, more profound. She was making a choice, taking a leap of faith that could change everything for both of them. The connection. When Nyxara's fingertip touched his palm, the world shifted. The contact was feather-light at first, just the barest brush of skin against skin, but the moment their flesh connected, everything changed. Warmth spread up Jaxon's arm, not painful but startling in its intimacy. Her eyes widened, the glow intensifying, and he felt a strange sensation in his mind, like someone gently opening a door he hadn't known was there. Through that connection, he felt her emotions as clearly as his own. Terror, yes, but beneath it was something else, wonder, hope, and a desperate longing for understanding. She wasn't reading his mind, he realized, but sensing his heart. And what she found there surprised them both. For the first time since he'd entered the cell, Nyxara smiled. It was tentative, fragile as spun glass, but unmistakably real. The fear didn't disappear from her eyes, but it was joined by something that looked remarkably like relief. "You're not like the others," she whispered in accented but clear English, her voice like music. "Your heart. It's kind." Jaxon felt tears prick his eyes. Through their connection, he sensed fragments of her recent experience. The terror of capture, weeks of isolation, the constant fear that every approaching footstep meant more pain. But he also felt her amazement at finding someone who approached her without hatred or disgust. "What's your name?" he asked gently, though he already knew from her file. "Nyxara," she replied, her hand still resting in his. "It means hope singer in my language." She paused, studying his face with those remarkable eyes. "What does Jaxon mean?" "Healer," he said, and watched her smile widen slightly. "Yes," she said with quiet certainty. "This fits you." Outside the cell, he could hear Captain Brennan speaking urgently into his comm device, probably reporting the breach of protocol. But Jaxon couldn't bring himself to care. Something extraordinary was happening here, something that might change the course of human-alien relations forever. Through their joined hands, Nyxara shared more of herself, glimpses of her homeworld. With its crystal forests and silver seas, memories of her people's peaceful culture, and the devastating loss she'd suffered when the war began. In return, he offered his own emotions, his genuine desire to help, his fascination with her species, and his growing respect for her strength. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" she asked, her thumb tracing gentle patterns on his palm. "Because fear is learned," Jaxon replied. "And I'd rather learn about you than be afraid of you." The cell door chimed, indicating his time was up. As he reluctantly prepared to leave, Nyxara caught his hand with both of hers. "Will you come back?" she asked, and he heard the vulnerability in her voice, felt it through their connection. "Every day," he promised, and through their touch, she felt the truth of his words. As the door sealed behind him, Captain Brennan was waiting with crossed arms and a stern expression. "Dr. Reed, we need to talk. What you just did violated every safety protocol we have." But Jackson's attention was still on the woman behind the reinforced barrier. She was no longer huddled in the corner. Instead, she stood near the window, one hand pressed against the transparent surface, her luminous eyes following his every movement. For the first time since arriving at Omega-7, he felt hope. Not just for Nyxara's recovery, but for something much larger. The possibility that understanding could bridge the gap between species, that touch could be more powerful than fear, and that sometimes the greatest breakthroughs came from breaking the rules. As he walked away from Cell Block C, Jaxon carried with him the memory of her smile and the warmth of her touch. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. Daily revelations. 2 weeks had passed since that first breakthrough, and Jaxon found himself counting the hours between visits to Nyxara's cell. What had begun as medical evaluations had evolved into something far more complex and meaningful. Each day brought new discoveries about her species, her culture, and the remarkable woman herself. Today he carried a small tablet loaded with images of Earth's landscapes and cultures. The facility administrators had approved it as part of cultural exchange therapy, though Jaxon suspected Commander Torres was growing suspicious of his extended sessions. "Jaxon," Nyxara greeted him as he entered, rising gracefully from where she'd been sitting cross-legged on her cot. Her health had improved dramatically over the past weeks. She was eating regularly now, and the haunted look in her luminous eyes had been replaced by curiosity and warmth. "Hello, Hope Singer," he replied, using the translation of her name that had become his private endearment for her. Her smile in response made his heart skip. As they settled on the narrow cot together, their hands finding each other with practiced ease, Jaxon marveled at how natural this had become. Through their connection, emotions flowed freely between them. His anticipation at seeing her, her joy at his arrival, and beneath it all, something deeper that neither had yet put into words. "Today I want to understand something," Nyxara said, her accented English much improved from their daily conversations. "Your people wear barriers, not just gloves, but here." She touched her chest over her heart. "Why do humans fear emotional connection?" Through their joined hands, Jaxon shared his thoughts. "We're taught that vulnerability is weakness, that showing emotion makes us targets. It's a survival mechanism from when we were still evolving." "But this makes you lonely," she observed, her empathic abilities picking up the truth of human isolation. "I feel it in all the guards, the scientists. They hunger for connection, but fear it." "What about your people?" Jaxon asked. "How do the Veilari live?" Nyxara's expression grew distant, tinged with sadness. "We are bonded from birth, families, communities, all connected through touch and shared emotion. When we mate, we choose a life bond that joins our souls completely. Her grip tightened on his hand. I had such a bond once. His name was Zephyr. Through their connection, Jaxon felt the echo of her grief, love so deep it had become part of her identity, then torn away in the chaos of war. He died in the first bombardment of our homeworld, she whispered. I felt him leave this existence through our bond. Part of me died with him. Jaxon's heart ached for her loss, and she felt his empathy through their connection. I'm sorry, he said, meaning it with every fiber of his being. But now, she continued, looking directly into his eyes, I feel something new growing, something I thought impossible after losing Zephyr. Her thumb traced patterns on his palm. The connection between us, it deepens each day. In my culture, this means... She trailed off, but through their bond, he felt what she couldn't say. Love. Growing, undeniable love that transcended species and circumstance. Forbidden desires. Nyxara, Jaxon said carefully. What we're feeling, it's dangerous for both of us. If the facility administration discovers this, I know the risks, she replied softly. But I also know what I feel from your heart. You care for me as more than a patient, more than an alien specimen to study. She was right, and they both knew it. Over the weeks, his professional concern had evolved into something much deeper. He looked forward to their sessions not for the scientific insights, but for the warmth of her presence, the music of her laugh, the way her eyes lit up when she saw him. Show me more of your world, she requested, nodding toward the tablet he'd brought. As they scrolled through images of Earth's oceans, mountains, and cities, Nyxara's wonder flowed through their connection. But when they reached photos of couples, humans, holding hands, embracing, sharing intimate moments, her emotions shifted to something more complex. Your bonding rituals are different from ours, she observed, but the underlying emotion is the same. She looked at him with those luminous eyes. I can feel what you experience when you see these images. You long for such connection, but you've never found it. Her accuracy was startling. Through their empathic link, she saw through all his defenses to the loneliness he'd carried his entire adult life, the failed relationships, the career that consumed everything, the walls he'd built to protect himself from disappointment. With you, he admitted quietly, I feel like I understand what I've been missing. Nyxara shifted closer, their faces now inches apart. In my culture, when two souls recognize each other as we have, physical barriers become unnecessary. Would you remove more of your protective clothing? The request sent heat through Jaxon's entire body. Regulations required him to wear a full biosuit during interactions, ostensibly for protection from alien pathogens, but really to prevent exactly what was happening between them. Without breaking eye contact, he began unsealing his jacket. The facility's environmental controls ensured the air was clean, and his medical scans had long since confirmed that Nyxara posed no biological threat. As the protective layers fell away, leaving him in just his basic uniform, her skin began to glow more brightly. Your emotions, she breathed, they're so much clearer now. I can feel your desire, your affection, your... She paused, searching for the word. Love. You love me. Yes, he said simply, no longer able to deny it. I love you, Nyxara. When she leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his, the connection between them exploded into something transcendent. Every barrier fell away as their minds and hearts aligned completely. Through her consciousness, he experienced the depth of Veilari emotion, love that encompassed not just romance but spiritual union, understanding that went beyond words, trust absolute and unquestioning. Dangerous secrets. There's something else. Nyxara whispered against his lips, their faces still touching. Something I've been afraid to share. But now... She pulled back to look into his eyes. I have information that could save lives, end the hatred between our peoples. Through their enhanced connection, images flowed from her mind to his. Hidden installations where human prisoners were being held by extremist factions, political leaders on both sides who had orchestrated the war for their own gain. Evidence that the majority of the coalition had actually opposed the conflict. 3 camps, she said urgently. Humans captured during the early battles, kept alive as bargaining chips. Your military believes they're dead, but they're not. I know their locations. Jaxon felt the weight of this revelation. Why didn't you share this before? Who would believe a prisoner? Your people see me as the enemy. But you see me as I truly am. Her hands cupped his face. I trust you with my people's secrets because I trust you with my heart. The magnitude of what she was offering staggered him. This intelligence could reshape the post-war negotiations, save hundreds of lives, possibly prevent future conflicts. But sharing it would require him to reveal their relationship, to admit that an alien prisoner had become more important to him than his career or his species' prejudices. Jaxon, she continued, there's more. To share this information completely, to give you all the details and proof you would need, I would have to forge a deeper connection, full contact, skin to skin for an extended time. Heat flooded through him as he understood her meaning. You're talking about intimate bonding, she confirmed, her cheeks taking on a subtle luminescence. In my culture, it's how the deepest secrets and emotions are shared between life mates. It would join us permanently. You would always feel my emotions as I feel yours. The choice before him was staggering. Take this final step with her, accept the complete bond she was offering, and gain the intelligence that could save lives and change the course of history. But also accept that there would be no hiding their relationship afterward, no pretending it was merely professional. Looking into her glowing eyes, seeing the love and trust there, feeling through their connection, her absolute certainty about their bond, Jaxon made his choice. Tonight, he said, his voice rough with emotion, when the facility is quiet, I'll disable the monitoring systems. Her smile was radiant. Tonight, we become one soul in 2 bodies. As he prepared to leave, Nyxara caught his hand one final time. Whatever comes after, she said, whatever consequences we face, know that this is right. The universe brought us together across species, across the hatred of war, because love is stronger than fear. Walking away from her cell, Jaxon's heart pounded with anticipation and terror. Tonight would change everything, for them, and possibly for the future of human-alien relations. The night of bonding midnight at Omega-7 was eerily quiet. The facility's automated systems hummed their electronic lullabies while skeleton crews monitored the detention blocks. Jaxon had spent hours planning this moment, memorizing guard, rotations, and surveillance patterns. His hands shook as he input his override codes into the monitoring system for cell block C. Dr. Reed? The night supervisor's voice crackled through his comm unit. We're showing a brief interruption in cell. 15's audio feed. Technical maintenance, Jaxon replied, forcing his voice to remain steady. Standard recalibration. Should be resolved within the hour. The lie came easier than he'd expected, but the weight of what he was about to do pressed down on him like gravity. This wasn't just about desire or even love. It was about choosing trust over fear, connection over separation, hope over the hatred that had defined human-alien relations since the war began. Nyxara was waiting when he entered her cell. She had arranged the small space as much as possible, the harsh lighting dimmed to its lowest setting, the thin blanket spread across the narrow cot. She wore only the basic undergarments provided to all prisoners, her luminescent skin casting gentle patterns on the walls. You came, she said softly, rising to meet him. Did you doubt I would? Never. She stepped closer, her hands reaching for his uniform jacket. "Your heart spoke to mine across the facility all day. I felt your decision, your certainty." As she helped him remove his clothes, Jaxon marveled at the surreal nature of the moment. Here he was, a human doctor, about to bond intimately with an alien prisoner in a maximum security facility. By any rational measure, it was insane. But rationality had nothing to do with what existed between them. When they came together on the narrow cot, skin against luminescent skin from chest to thigh, the connection that flowed between them was overwhelming in its intensity. Every nerve, ending came alive as their minds merged completely. Through her consciousness, the intelligence she'd promised flooded into his awareness. He saw the hidden camps where human prisoners languished, their exact coordinates, the guards' routines, the political machinations that kept them secret. He experienced her people's true history, their centuries of peaceful development, their horror when extremist factions on both sides pushed them into war. But beyond the vital information, he felt the depth of her love for him, complete, transformative, and eternal. And she felt his response, the way she had become the center of his universe, more important than career or protocol or the approval of his own species. "Now we are truly one," she whispered against his lips as they moved together in an ancient dance of connection. "My heartmate, my soul bond forever." Discovery and consequences. Dawn brought the sound of marching boots and shouted orders. Jaxon woke to find himself still entwined with Nyxara, their bond now permanent and absolute. Through their connection, he felt her instant alertness, her fear for him rather than herself. "Security sweep," she whispered, reading the emotions of the approaching guards through her empathic abilities. "Someone discovered the monitoring gap." They dressed quickly, but there was no hiding what had occurred. Nyxara's skin still glowed with the after-effects of their bonding, and Jaxon's own appearance showed the signs of a night spent in intimate contact with his patient. Captain Brennan burst through the cell door with 4 armed guards, his face flushed with anger and betrayal. "Dr. Jaxon Reed, you are under arrest for violation of military protocol, fraternization with an enemy prisoner, and potential treason." "She's not an enemy," Jaxon said calmly, standing protectively in front of Nyxara. "She's the key to ending this hatred between our species." "She's an alien who has obviously compromised you," Brennan snarled. "Guards, restrain the prisoner. Use maximum containment protocols." "No," Nyxara cried as they moved toward her with neural restraints designed to block her empathic abilities. Through their bond, Jaxon felt her terror, not of the physical confinement, but of being cut off from him so soon after their joining. "Wait," Jaxon said urgently. "Captain, before you do anything irreversible, Nyxara has intelligence that could save hundreds of human lives. Give me 5 minutes to explain." Brennan hesitated, his training warring with curiosity. 2 minutes, Doctor. And if this is some kind of alien manipulation, it's not." Jaxon helped Nyxara to her feet, their hands joining automatically. Through their bond, she shared her strength with him. She knows the locations of 3 prisoner camps where humans captured in the early battles are still being held alive. For the next few minutes, Jaxon relayed everything Nyxara had shared: coordinates, guard strengths, political intelligence that painted the war in an entirely different light. Brennan's expression shifted from anger to shock to careful consideration. "Even if this intelligence is accurate," he said finally, "it doesn't excuse what you've done. You've compromised yourself with an alien. How can we trust anything either of you says now?" "Because love doesn't lie," Nyxara spoke for the first time, her accented voice carrying absolute conviction. "Through our bond, deception is impossible. What I have shared with Jaxon, I share freely with all humans who wish peace." The trial of hearts, the emergency tribunal convened within hours. Commander Torres, Captain Brennan, and 3 other senior Officers sat in judgment while Jaxon and Nyxara faced charges that could result in his court-martial and her execution. "The evidence is clear," Prosecuting Officer Major Kane declared. "Dr. Reed has been compromised by an alien prisoner who used her telepathic abilities to manipulate him into revealing classified information about our security protocols." "That's not what happened," Jaxon protested, but his objections were overruled. "Furthermore," Kane continued, "the prisoner's so-called intelligence is likely fabricated to create the illusion of cooperation while planning escape or sabotage." Through their bond, Jaxon felt Nyxara's growing despair. Her people's cultural concepts of trust and emotional honesty meant nothing here. She was being judged by the standards of a species that had weaponized mistrust. "If I may address the tribunal," Nyxara said, rising to her feet with regal dignity despite her restraints. "The prisoner will remain silent," Kane snapped. "Let her speak," Commander Torres said quietly. There was something in the older woman's expression, perhaps the memory of her own losses in the war, or simple human curiosity about what this alien might say in her own defense. Nyxara looked directly at each officer in turn. "In my culture, we have a saying, fear builds walls, but love builds bridges. You judge our connection as weakness, but I tell you it is strength. Through Jaxon's heart, I have seen the best of humanity, compassion, courage, the desire to heal rather than harm." She paused, her luminous eyes finding Jaxon's across the room. "You think I manipulated him, but you understand nothing of how our bonding works. I cannot take what is not freely given. Every emotion, every choice, every moment of love has been his decision." "Pretty words," Kane said dismissively. "But we need proof of your supposed intelligence, not romantic speeches." "Then let me prove it," Nyxara replied. "Send teams to the coordinates I have provided. Bring back your people, alive, as I have promised. When you see the truth of what I have shared, you will know that our bond has made me humanity's ally, not its enemy." The leap of faith. The tribunal recessed for deliberation, leaving Jaxon and Nyxara alone except for their guards. Through their bond, they shared strength and comfort, each feeling the other's resolve despite the fear. "If they execute you," Jaxon whispered, "I'll find a way to stop them." "And if they imprison you, I will wait," she replied. "Love like ours doesn't end with death or separation. We are bonded across any distance, any barrier." When the tribunal reconvened, Commander Torres looked tired but determined. "Against my better judgment," she said, "we're going to test the prisoner's intelligence. 3 rapid response teams will be dispatched to the coordinates she provided. If human prisoners are found alive and rescued, we'll reconsider all charges." "And if not?" Jaxon asked. Torres's expression was grim. "Then Dr. Reed faces court-martial, and the prisoner faces execution for war crimes and espionage." The next 48 hours stretched like an eternity. Jaxon was confined to quarters, while Nyxara remained in maximum security isolation, their bond their only comfort across the facility's barriers. Through their connection, they sustained each other, sharing hope when despair threatened, offering strength when fear overwhelmed. The night of bonding midnight at Omega-7 was eerily. Then, on the morning of the 3rd day, Commander Torres summoned them both. "The teams have reported in," she said without preamble. "All 3 camps were exactly where the prisoner indicated. We recovered 47 human prisoners, including civilians thought dead for over a year." The relief that flooded through their bond was overwhelming. Nyxara swayed on her feet, and Jaxon reached out instinctively to steady her, no longer caring about protocol. "Furthermore," Torres continued, "the political intelligence has been verified. We now have evidence that extremist factions manipulated both sides into war against the wishes of the majority coalition council." She looked at them both for a long moment. "The charges of treason and espionage are dropped. Dr. Reed, You'll face a formal reprimand for violation of protocol, but given the intelligence gained, no further punishment will be pursued." "And Nyxara?" Jaxon asked. Torres smiled for the first time since he'd known her. "The prisoner is hereby granted refugee status and asylum. It seems our species have much to learn from each other about the power of connection over fear." Epilogue. New Beginnings. 6 months later, Jaxon stood on the observation deck of Earth's first interspecies research station, watching ships from a dozen worlds dock at the massive facility. The intelligence Nyxara had provided had indeed changed. Everything, leading to the rescue of hundreds more prisoners, the overthrow of the extremist factions, and the beginning of true peace negotiations. "The Council of Worlds votes tomorrow on the new alliance treaty," Nyxara said, joining him at the viewport. Her status had transformed from prisoner to ambassador, her empathic abilities now valued as diplomatic tools rather than feared as weapons. "Nervous?" he asked, taking her hand in his. Even after months together, their bond continued to deepen, their connection serving as living proof that understanding could bridge any gap. "With you beside me?" "Never." She leaned into his embrace, her luminescent skin warm against his. "Besides, I have something even more important to focus on today." She pulled back to look into his eyes, her expression radiant with joy. Through their bond, he felt her emotions before she spoke the words, love, excitement, and a deep maternal contentment that made his heart race. "Jaxon," she whispered, "we're going to have a child." The news hit him like a star going nova. Oh, child. Part human, part Veilari, a living symbol of what love could create when fear was set aside. Through their connection, he felt her reading his emotions, shock giving way to overwhelming joy, protective love for both her and their unborn child, and wonder at the future they were creating together. "Our daughter," Nyxara continued, her hand moving to her still flat abdomen, "will grow up in a universe where different species choose love over fear, where connection triumphs over separation." As they kissed, surrounded by the light of 1,000 stars and the ships of countless worlds, Jaxon marveled at the journey that had brought them here. It had begun with a simple choice, to remove his gloves and offer trust instead of fear. That single moment of connection had transformed not just their lives, but the fate of 2 species. In the distance, Earth hung like a blue jewel against the cosmic dark, no longer alone in the universe. And in the research stations and diplomatic outposts spreading across the galaxy, humans and aliens worked side by side, learning that the greatest discoveries came not from studying differences, but from celebrating the connections that bound all sentient life together. Love, it turned out, really was stronger than fear. And sometimes it only took one touch to change the world. The end.